And we are back with my exclusive interview with the CEO of Sony Pictures, Michael Lynton, about the North Korean hack attack against his company and the threat of terrorism. Michael, let me ask you to go through the sequence of happened. When did you first realize that you had a problem?
The first time we understood that there was an issue with the North Koreans was back in June of last summer, when they came forward with various emails and statements, and actually I think they were in touch with the White House itself and described their disfavor with the movie. At that point in time, we actually reached out to experts at think tanks within the State Department to try and get a proper understanding of whether or not there was a problem here and whether or not we were providing a security risk. And we were told that there wasn't a problem here, and so we continued to proceed.
Including the U.S. government told you there wasn't a problem?
The U.S. government told us there wasn't a problem. That's correct.
So when people ask, the North Koreans threatened you, why didn't you take this seriously?
We did take it seriously. We went to the people who we thought were most expert in the area, people in the U.S. government, people in various think tanks, and inquired as to whether or not this would be a problem, and they told us that it wasn't. And that actually is for the world to see, as my stolen emails have been presented in public.
There was an email between you and somebody at the RAND Corporation
and somebody between me and the State Department, correct.
Right. When you began to experience the cyber attack, what was your response? Because there are a number of people who wonder, why did this happen? Did you have weak malware? Did you not have the kind of cybersecurity you needed?
No, we had absolutely sufficient cybersecurity. I mean, both the FBI and Mandiant, the experts who we brought in, basically said that the malware was so sophisticated that 90% of American businesses would have fallen prey to what happened to us. So no, I don't think we were inadequate at all in our cybersecurity.
So what that means is that this is at a level, that the attack is at a level of sophistication that really very few companies, perhaps no company, would be able to withstand.
That's what I've been given to understand. And as a result, they stole all of our data, wiped our computers clean, and then destroyed the computers and the servers, all of which is in the FBI report that came out today.
What is your estimate of the damage of that cyber attack to Sony?
We haven't come to an estimate as of yet.
But certainly in the tens of millions.
It's very significant. It's very significant, yes.
Variety reports that you will lose $75 million on this movie. Is that accurate?
You know, we don't get into the exact numbers of it. And by the way, it still remains to be seen as to how we, and if we can get the movie out, at which point that, you know, whatever the losses or the gains might be are still to be realized. So it's too early to determine.
Could you collect insurance on this?
There is insurance as it pertains to the cyber attack itself, and so we may be able to find ourselves in a situation where we could collect some insurance, yeah.
You know, there are a lot of people who feel that this movie should never have been made. That you're talking about, it's a movie about the assassination of a sitting world leader, a country that has nuclear weapons, that it was in poor taste, that you should not have made this movie and risked Sony's credibility.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we made the movie because we thought it was a funny comedy. Secondly, there is a long history of political satire in film, and this clearly falls into that realm. But I would also say that fundamentally isn't the issue here. The issue here is that having made the movie, we feel very strongly that it should have been in theaters for the American public to have seen. And we did everything in our power to make that happen. We did not cave, we did not back down, and we continued in that pursuit right up until the end.
How damaging has it been that your emails, your personnel records are out there in the open?
You know, it's hurtful to everybody at Sony Pictures. Everybody, and by the way, many of the folks who work with us outside of Sony Pictures. That part has been damaging and hurtful. It's not nice to have your emails exposed to the general public. It has had a real effect on the morale of the company, and many people are frightened because of it. We'll recover. We've worked very, very hard to do so, and we're in the process now.
When you look at this, this is one of the great episodes of crisis management in management history. What is the lesson you take from it?
I take a couple of lessons. First of all, I take the lesson, because it's gone on now for about a month, you need to keep a cool and clear and sober mind throughout the process, because everyone in the organization is looking to you to have that attitude and to have that point of view and to be a clear thinker. You also need to make sure that you keep your eye on what the objective is going forward. And the objective for us has always been and will always be to make sure that the creative artists who work with us can continue in their endeavor, whether that be making television shows or films, and that we be able, to the best of our ability, distribute those out to the public. And I think we have continued to pursue that objective throughout this period. Yes, we were thwarted at the end when the theaters chose not to show the movie, but the objective remained very clear in everyone's mind throughout the process.
When we come back, I will ask Michael Lynton whether, as a supporter of the president, he was disappointed by what he heard from him.
Burnett Out Front, tomorrow night at 7 Eastern on CNN.
And we are back with the CEO of Sony Entertainment to get Sony's side of the story and to hear from Michael Lynton, the head of the studio. You are well known as somebody who supported President Obama.
Yes.
Were you disappointed in what you heard today?
I would be fibbing to say I wasn't disappointed. The president and I haven't spoken. I don't know exactly whether he understands the sequence of events that led up to the movies not being shown in the movie theaters. Therefore, I would disagree with the notion that it was a mistake. It's a generally held view by the public and the press that that's what happened, and maybe that's how that view was held by him. But knowing, as I do, the facts and how they've unfolded, we stood extremely firm in terms of making certain that this movie would appear in movie theaters.
Do you feel that the U.S. government, the FBI in particular, and I gather you've been in touch with other agencies, the CIA, the NSA, have they been helpful? Are you happy with the kind of cooperation you've gotten?
The vast majority of the interaction has been with the FBI, and they have been absolutely spectacular throughout. They came and stayed with us for the entire period. They came to a resolution as to who was responsible for this in a record amount of time. I can't speak more highly of the agency than that. They were really the folks who we were in touch with in this process.
Would you make the movie again?
Yeah, I would make the movie again. I think, for the same reasons we made it in the first place. It was a funny comedy. It served as political satire. I think we would have made the movie again. Knowing what I know now, we might have done some things slightly differently, but I think a lot of events have overtaken us in a way that we had no control over the facts.
And you're saying you still want the public to see this movie?
We would still like the public to see this movie, absolutely. We have to explore options as to how that might happen, because while everybody comes forward and says, release it digitally, do it on VOD, do this, do that, all of these things are in their own way complicated. Many people don't want to come near the movie because they fear that in some way, shape, or form their systems, their servers might be infected with the malware that came to us. So, what we really need to do now is evaluate the best way that forward for all of us, and that's what we're in the process of doing.
You've been at Sony Pictures for a while. You ran Penguin Press. Is this a very dangerous blow against freedom of expression?
It is. I came to Penguin a few years after the publication of Salman Rushdie's book, which was the book that Penguin published. And in that instance, it was for one thing, it was pre-9/11, obviously. But even there, with the fatwa, and actually some people were killed in that instance, the entire industry came together around Penguin. The publishers, the booksellers always stocked the book, and the authors all came out in support of the book. That did not happen in this instance. In this instance, we stood alone in trying to get a movie out. I think now, part of the reason for that, I suspect, is because the conversation got caught up in all of these emails. Many of them were deeply unfortunate. A lot of them involved celebrities, and people didn't understand what the real issue at stake was. And the real issue at stake was we now discover it's North Korea, but we had a group of individuals who were hell-bent on making certain that this movie not show up in movie theaters. And we were hell-bent on making certain that it did show up in movie theaters. And the problem was, in part, that support that I sort of saw at the very end was there for Satanic Verses, and I wasn't at Penguin at the time, but came there right after my predecessor was the publisher. That kind of support was not there for this movie, and I think part of the reason, as I mentioned, is because everybody got caught up in all of this, on all of their attention being spent on these other things, which frankly are a sideshow in the whole affair.
Do you worry what this has done to Sony's brand? I mean, you're one of the great electronics companies.
Yeah, no, I recognize that. I think we can recover as a brand, or we have to assess what it means to the brand. I certainly think that we can recover from this, yes. I think we have, strong relations within the creative community. I think many of them now understand what it is that happened, and are sympathetic to what it is we've had to go through this process.
Somebody asked the president at his news conference, would he watch the movie if the president... Are you going to send it to him? Are you going to send him
If the president wants to see the movie, I would be more than delighted to send it to him. It would be my pleasure.
Michael Lynton, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.
When we come back, the rest of all the news this week. I've got a great panel to talk about it. Cuba coming in from the cold, Russia's ruble collapses, and the Taliban's cowardly attack on a school in Pakistan.